I'm going to quickly walk you through some very basic Adobe Premiere Pro video editing tips. First, you're going to hit New Project, and then you're going to have to name your project because you don't want a lot of files around called Untitled. So let's name this Video Editing Tutorial. Next, you're going to want to hit Browse and find the folder where you're saving all of your content. This is very important because once you start editing a lot of different videos, you don't want your files all over your desktop or in your downloads. So I created a folder already here that just says tutorials. And I've also saved my video that I'm going to be showing you in a second of me presenting on camera and some additional clips here. So this is a good folder for me to save it in, and I'm going to hit choose. Then I hit OK, and you're going to see Adobe Premiere Pro open up, and there's lots of windows and buttons, but just ignore that for the sake of this tutorial. We're going to get into much more complex editing later on. For this tutorial, we're going to do a very basic import, and we're going to trim some video and add a couple of clips on top. So go to File, and then go to Import. I'm going to identify the video that I selected earlier of myself presenting on camera, and then I'm going to hit Import. Once it's imported into my bin, I'm going to double click on it, and it will pop up over here on my monitor to the left. I'm going to scroll to where I want to start the video. Then I'm going to hit the I button on my keyboard for endpoint. Then I'm going to scroll to the end. And then I'm going to hit the O button for out point. Now I've trimmed off the beginning and the end, and I'm going to create a timeline. One of the easiest ways to create a timeline is just to click up here and drag it over to the right where it says drop media here to create a sequence. There are some challenges with editing this way, and I will walk you through that in later tutorials, but for this one, we're just going to keep it simple, and I'll explain as we go. So this is the timeline, and this is our main monitor where we're going to be editing. Video channel 1 or video track 1 right here includes my video. A1 includes my audio. I can have a bigger view of my audio by clicking and dragging and holding that down so I can manipulate my audio, and I can do the same with my video. But for now, I'm just going to get started on my audio. So I have some waves of audio here, and I just want to make sure that it's the right volume. So I'm going to hit play, and then over here to the right, we're going to try to aim for the audio to be around -12 decibels.
Hi, I'm Jeanette with IMAP Books.
Okay, so the audio is pretty good. If I wanted to raise it, I could click on this white line here and lift it up, or I could pull it down. If it started like this, it would be too low. But if your video is being imported at that volume, you may want to consider re-recording, because if you increase the audio and all of that background noise is going with it, it might be a little hard to edit out. So it may just be easier for you to re-record. But my audio was around -12 decibels, so I was okay. If the audio was really loud, like this,
Through the consent process.
and you see it hitting this red up here, it might be overmodulated when you recorded it. So you might want to re-record until you get something that's about -12, but you can always go up or down here to kind of tweak it for you. But it's good if what you have coming in is about what you want. But if I wanted to raise a little bit or a little down, that's how you would do that. So the next thing I want to do here, now that my audio is the right volume, is make sure that I'm trimming the ends. So I'm going to go to the very beginning and see if this is an appropriate amount of pause, because I don't want to start it right as I start talking. I do want to leave a little bit of a pause. I just don't want it to be too awkward. So let's hit this play button here. I can also hit my space tab on my keyboard.
Hi,
So that may have been a little bit too long. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here by clicking here and then dragging it to the left to zoom in on my video here. And at the top, you'll see these separated in seconds. I start talking a little after like 1.5 seconds. Maybe that's too much. So I'm going to want to trim a little bit of the beginning off. And I can hover my mouse on the very left until you see this red arrow. Click, and just drag it to the right. That's one of the many ways that you can trim your video in Premiere Pro. I could either click this video and drag it over to the left, or I can click in this empty spot here and I could right click, ripple delete, and it'll just pop it right over to the left. Now let's play again to make sure that this is an appropriate pause at the beginning of my video.
Hi, I'm Jeanette with IMAP Books.
That felt a little bit more natural to me. Let's do the same toward the end.
Asking you to sign and why.
Okay, so that was totally fine.
consent-
I've trimmed the beginning and the end, and my audio is the appropriate volume. The next thing I want to do is add a couple of visuals. I call them B-roll, but you can have video, graphics, text. I'm going to import that into my project now by going File, Import, and then I'm going to go back here and find my B-roll folder. So I can import the entire folder like this, and then it'll actually create a folder. So I'll show you that right now. If I create import, and it'll create a folder here. And it's nice to keep your bin organized because when you do start editing longer projects, this will really come in handy. So all of these clips here are video clips, and I can view them this way, or if I wanted to change the way I'm viewing it, I could view it in icon mode. And then I could kind of scroll through and see which videos I wanted. Either one is totally fine. It's up to you. You can customize that down here, and you can also adjust the size of the icons if that's helpful for you as you edit. I'm going to start with this wide shot of a manatee. Let's say I'm talking about manatees and I want to explain what I'm talking about. Let's get about a few seconds of this. And I think that's fine. And I'm going to click and drag it over here. And I'm going to drag my B-roll on V2. So it's on top of me talking. So when I move my mouse over here, it's going to pop up on top of me. But I want to point out a very, very common thing that happens when you create a timeline the way that we did earlier. This may happen to many of you. So what happened was that the original video that I edited was 4K. So I even named it the 4K pixels. So if we go over here to the sequence settings and we click sequence settings, you'll see that the original video here was 3840 by 2160. So it was horizontal, 16 by 9, but it was 4K. So it was a larger pixels, which is not a problem here. I'm just going to go over to my B-roll, which actually was shot in 1920 by 1080. And if you don't know what any of this means, don't worry. We'll learn later when we get into the more complex area. But I did want to show you this common problem because a lot of people get confused when this happens here. The easiest way to fix this is to double click here, and then you'll be able to actually make this larger and you'll allow it to fill the whole screen. Another thing that you could do is you could right click here and you could do a scale to frame size. So scale to frame size will also just pop it right there. So it's the same size. So you want to make sure to take that extra step so that your visuals look full screen if that's your intent. So let's say I wanted to shorten this a little bit. I could shorten this to about 3 seconds or so, which is a pretty ideal duration. And then I'll add another one here. Let's say this medium shot. So now because I'm not shortening it here, I'm going to have to shorten it here. So you could do either one if the shots don't really matter, or I could say I really wanted this specific part and I could do the in and the out like what we did earlier. So those are two different ways that you can shorten your clips. The last one, let's go with a close-up of this manatee. And if I just want to drag it over to my timeline here, and I'm going to shorten it, so that way it's an appropriate duration. I'm going to right-click, scale to frame size. And now we have a wide shot, a medium shot, and a close-up of the manatees that I'm talking about. So those are some basic things that might happen to you when you add B-roll on top of yourself talking. One last little thing to keep an eye out for is if you accidentally add vertical video on top of a horizontal video. So this video here is vertical. So if I scale to frame size, you'll see that you can still see me on the outside. So there's a couple of things that you can do in this instance. You could just make it bigger like this, but understand that as you zoom, you are reducing the resolution. You could do that. That's one option. Or you could rotate it. So I'm going to undo here, and I'm going to go over to the effects control panel, just like that. And it is selected. My clip is selected. I'm going to go over here, and you'll see there's a rotation area. If I click and drag and move it to the left, you can see that I could make it like 90 degrees. And now I don't have to reduce the resolution as much when I scale, and that looks a little bit better there. So those are just a few very common things that will happen as you're editing. Those are the main things that people will have problems with. Before we wrap up, I want to show you the other thing that kind of trips people up when they're using B-roll or video on top of themselves talking, which is B-roll nats. So this video has just natural sound. If I hit mute on myself talking and I just listen to this B-roll audio that we have here in A2, you can see that there's audio playing. So that volume actually isn't that bad. If you have B-roll nats and they're about -30 decibels, that's pretty good. But sometimes you might have a car honking or something that's distracting that's not helping you tell your story. So if you click and open this here, you can reduce the audio a little bit if it's not appropriate audio that helps you tell your story. Or if you drag this all the way to the bottom, you can mute it. So there are a couple things that you can do here. Another thing you could do if the audio is just completely not matching your story and you just want to remove it, you could mute it by clicking on Option and then selecting the audio and only deleting that. That's one way to do it. So those are some main things that people will generally struggle with when they're editing. But this is a basic edit. Hello, I'm talking about some manatees. Let me show you some manatees, and then a goodbye. The last thing I want to do here is export my video. So my video ends right here, and I am going to show you how to select what I'm exporting. So sometimes you'll have some clips that you might put over here on the side, and you want to make sure that you export and you hit I at the very beginning. And then you scroll over here and you hit O, and that way you know, and you can zoom all the way in and you can adjust that you're only exporting this part. If you don't do that and you do happen to have some B-roll clips over here, it might export a lot of black video. So if you see that it's taking a long time to export, you might want to come back and just do a quick in and an out. So that way your timeline has the correct video that you want to export. Last thing we want to do here is go over to File, Export Media. And I'm going to export this in H.264, which is one of the most common video file formats. It will export as an MP4 video. So this is a good one. If it's not automatically set to H.264, I recommend that you consider exporting it this way, depending on what you're going to be using the video for, which we'll get into in more complex videos later. If you have a specific platform where you're posting this, or let's say you're airing this on TV, you might have different formats, but generally H.264 is going to work on YouTube, it's going to work on social media, on websites. So this is the most friendly format that I would recommend. For output name, you're going to click here and you're going to name it something. So I'm going to name this video editing tutorial, and I'm going to make sure that I'm saving it in the right spot because it'll default to the last place where you saved work, which is this folder here, and that's where I have everything, so it's all organized in the same place. I'm going to quickly look at my output settings, and these are correct, and I'll explain all of these things in more detail later. And I can scroll through here to make sure that I have everything that I want. And then I'm just going to hit the export button. So, depending on your computer speed, it might export really quickly. We don't have a lot of animations or motion graphics, so it shouldn't take that much time. And then you can find your finished video in that folder where you saved your work. People will often get confused and say, I exported it and I don't know where it went. So make sure that you're intentionally saving it in a specific folder. And this is the video we just exported. So I can open it up and then just scroll through and watch the video that we just made. So hopefully that was a helpful, super quick view of editing video and audio in Premiere Pro. Stick around for some more videos to learn more complex techniques and to learn some tips and things that you need to know if you're going to be editing things like TV shows or documentaries or want to get some practice using some motion graphics. Thanks so much for watching.